everybody to this webinar about the development of agroecology, where we had already other ones, and today specifically on Bulgaria and Romania, which is in the frame of the mapping is done in the frame of the Agroecology4EU project. Next slide, please, Baptiste. So while there will be a small introduction from my side, then we are going first and looking at the main results and outcomes in Bulgaria, then switching to Romania without questions in between. And then at the end, we have overall questions and discussion about the two countries. Yeah, so that was the registration. We will see how many will really get connected. So most came from, well, interested from Bulgaria and France, then some from Belgium, Romania and Spain, and then from a few other countries where we had only one or two per country, but that's often just at the registration stage. So we will see how many will be really connected then today. Next, please. Interesting also to see the different types of stakeholders or the people which registered. So ranging from dominance with researchers, but also students and people working for NGO, a farmer, policymaker, and some others. Next, please. So just a very few words about this coordination and support action program, which is a 3-year project. So still next year, so it goes until 2023 and not 24. We have 12 partners in 10 European countries. Among them is all partners from Romania, which we will speak about today. While the main goal is to build a European agroecological network, to speed up the transition towards sustainable agriculture and food systems. Next, please. So just for reminder, for some which might not so know well the project, which I think is normal. So one of the key objectives are on the one side to increase connections between the different relevant actors, then to develop skills and methods regarding living labs and research for the development of research infrastructure and living labs. Then prepare funders that they can provide more fund and more targeted fund for agroecology, improve human and social capital, but also the capacity to tailor policy intervention to specific situations, and also develop in the medium and long-term research innovation projects and initiatives. And about some more initiatives which were identified from Bulgaria and Romania, we will speak about today, of course. Next, please. So the overall goal of the mapping of agroecology in Europe, to understand much better what is going on in the different countries, what is already existing there, even if sometimes not the term agroecology is always used, which we will probably hear also in a few minutes. And it's not a work which tries to get to be completely exhaustive for all countries, because that would take much more time, but to provide a good overview about the the current development. Next, please. So to analyze the agroecology in these different countries, we look at different categories and examples, cases, and initiatives which can be related to them. So the classical ones is the movements one, or others which are related to practice or science and research. But more specifically for this project, and also in the perspective of the creation of a European partnership in agroecology, living labs and research infrastructure, we have another category which is listed here in the middle about living labs. And on the right-hand side, also about different types of training and education, because there's also training and education outside the classical academic sphere, which is can be very important for agroecology. Next, please. So you might hear today sometimes two key notions. One is a key informant, so that's national experts, which are related to one or several categories of agroecology, which I just presented. And then initiatives, which can be projects, examples of different nature led by formal or informal organizations. Next. So how did we come to this mapping? So there was a first typically definition of the methodological approach. Then in the second step, that was a mapping, which was done then, of course, today also for Bulgaria and Romania. It was done with a network of mappers, often youth or younger people, which are the Agroecology Europe Youth Network, but also others, to analyze the current situation in the countries and then these different initiatives in the countries, which will then lead into a country report, which is not yet published, but will be published soon. And some elements of these country reports, of course, will be presented today. And then we will have semination with this webinar, for example, today. So where we are at the moment, we have finalized 14 countries all over Europe. And then 6 are almost finished. So in the very near future, there is mapping of agroecology ongoing or will start probably in January in 3 countries. And if you look at the 14 countries so far, we already have more than 129 initiatives which were analyzed and described in these different country reports. Next, please. So examples already of outputs, so outcomes. There were already 2 webinars related to the mapping. So one in spring about Germany, and so that's not a good slide, but Germany and Austria, and the second one from Italy and Greece at the bottom left. So we will have a book about the first 12 country reports, which will see the light normally in January, an open access book, so accessible to everybody. And also there is already the development of agroecology in Austria and Germany, which was submitted as a scientific paper and which is under revision at the moment. Next, please. And now I give the word to Vasileios, which will present things about what we find in Bulgaria related to agroecology.
All right, thank you, Alexander. It's Vasileios Gkisakis. Maybe it is a little sad that I'm not from Bulgaria due to some unavailability of the national, the local mappers to analyze orally, to present us the situation of mapping in Bulgaria. So I'm located in Greece, but I will present you the results of the mapping. We also have as a guest speaker Professor Vladislav Popov from the University, the Agricultural University of Plovdiv in Bulgaria. He's going to give us a brief introduction on the situation, the development of the agroecological concept at national level. And then I'm going to move forward to analyze the mapping results. So I will give the floor to Vladislav. If you can hear us. Yes.
Yes, I can hear you. Hello, everybody. Hello, Vasily. Yeah, what can I say? I mean, the mapping that was done, I had this privilege to introduce myself to the mapping. And the mapping that was done by this project, it was actually done very extensively, I must say. It was a kind of good overview of all the actors through the years. But I have to tell you that actually agroecology was not known as a science and an approach until probably 1991 in Bulgaria. Then it started to pick up a little bit, started to raise the profile after 1991. I remember I was one of the first graduates of Agriculture University of Plovdiv who actually completed kind of short specialization in agroecology. But in the very beginning, 1991 to 96, 95, 96, agroecology was perceived in Bulgaria as a protection of environment against pollution. So pollution that is coming from agricultural sources. It was the major perception among researchers, among farming communities, policymakers, etc. I remember in 1996, the first project on agroecology and organic farming was a large 4-year project within FARE program of the European Union called Danube program. And then Romania and Bulgaria were included. Agroecological Center at Agriculture University of Plovdiv and one NGO which was called the EcoFarm. But after that, we started to work together with the Ministry of Agriculture, and I see that among participants, I saw Viara Stefanova. She's probably still online. Viara and her colleagues at the Ministry of Agriculture developed. Actually, they have set up the first department, let's say unit of agroecology, which was more after the year 2000, which was actually much more progressive at that time during the SAPART project. And this unit was one of the most progressive units in the country related to agroecology. And the name of this unit was actually Agroecology Department at the Ministry of Agriculture. They started to think of and design and propose measures, specific measures in the upcoming agroecological program within the 2007-2014 rural development program, and design the measures and sub-measures on the measure 214, which was the agroecology, together with organic agriculture. So agroecology went hand in hand with organic farming, because organic farming was under legislative basis. It has a legislative basis at that time. But then I have to say that regarding research and innovation, research and education, it was done simultaneously by several universities in Bulgaria, led by Agroecological Center at Agriculture University of Plovdiv, of course. Also Forestry University in Sofia, and then also several research institutes within Agricultural Academy. And after 1996, I remember there were several NGOs started to working in organic agriculture and agroecology. So it has roots. I mean, agroecology has roots deeply in Bulgaria and Bulgarian research and education community. The first actually reader in agroecology was written and published in 2002, if I'm not wrong, at Agriculture University of Plovdiv, after our, let's say, collaboration with Wageningen University and Bologna and some other foreign universities. Now, what I see, and I pointed out to these two projects, European projects, is the financing of agroecological initiatives. This is, for me, this is one of the most important points, because the government, through the Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development programs, in two program periods, 2007-14 and then 14-20, dedicated sufficient and I would say really high amount of funds within the rural development plan to support agroecological measures. And farmers started slowly but surely understand the importance of some of these agroecological measures, for instance, mulching and permanent crops, or also the green manuring, and even if you wish, integrated in organic farming, because in 2014 organic farming was within agroecology measure. So yeah, it was, and then the NGOs, I have to admit, the Foundation Barcelona after 2014, the foundation of Viara and some other colleagues that were dealing with who were dealing with high nature value grasslands and pastures, and it is also very important for us. So yeah, that's in short the whole story with agroecology, but more and more initiatives, including projects, were developed after 2009, when actually the measure 214, the agroecological measure, was set up, and many farmers benefited from this measure through subsidies for agroecology. Thank you, Vasileios. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yep.
yes. Thank you, Vladislav. I think it was a very brief but very condensed presentation of the whole. It's more or less the thing that we're going to present as mapping results.
I can add more details, but I want to stop here because I really want you for the colleagues to have more time to present the mapping.
Okay, I hope you will be with us. So if there are any questions regarding the national situation of agroecology, we're very good to have you. So before continuing, I should say that this presentation was prepared, edited by two persons, Ruralis Sendova, which is the national Bulgarian mapper of agroecological initiatives in the country, and Vasileios, which is a Greek colleague working now for the Broad Unit around the Agroecology for Europe project. So I would like to thank you both. Vaso is actually present, Ruralis, I'm not sure she's here. So next slide of this. So I'm going to start presenting you the mapping results, the initiatives that have been mapped. As you can see, there are quite a few number of those initiatives, especially for education, training, and movement. You will notice that there is a much smaller number of living labs, which is actually a double character here. We have the University of Plovdiv, which is perceived like an educational training institute, but also a living lab. I'm going then to give you some rough overview of how the agroecological concept is understood and perceived by several stakeholders in Bulgaria, and also some small number of selected initiatives which were selected to present you here in these results, just for reasons of being representative of the agroecological situation in Bulgaria, without meaning that those not presented are not equally important or do not have to do greatly with agroecology. So next slide. This is a very brief overview, as I say, of the agroecological context in Bulgaria, with some rather important details that were revealed from the mapping during the last mostly 1 year or 2 years, 1 year and a half. So we can see that in Bulgaria, mostly agroecology is perceived as a set of practices at farm level, strictly related with organic farming. As Vladislav said, it's a term that is already used since 2 decades, mostly in the academia, but then gaining momentum by other kind of stakeholders. Is strictly related with the amount of subsidies coming from institutions like the European Union. It's already understood again at the, let's say, scientific level, at academic level, research, as an analysis of the agro-ecosystem, while there are many movements and NGOs doing a great work, working mostly on organic farming, but also other topics is not always related to agriculture, like biodiversity protection, etc. There is a small detail here that the mapping revealed that, let's say, the social perception of agroecology held by farmers is it has a connotation with being rather negative, and this became clear from the interviews that it has to do with the relation with subsidies, which are sometimes not very transparent when they are delivered to the farming sector. And of course, we hope that this will change in the future. So next slide, please. So starting with the agroecology in terms of education and training, I don't know if it's also clear for you. If possible, yes. To small down the Baptiste, yes, better. So again, as Vladislav said, is a term that actually started in the late 80s and early 90s from the Agricultural University of Plovdiv, where there was a bachelor, also a master degree curriculum. There's also today, until nowadays, a faculty of plant protection and agroecology. So there is this was, let's say, the pioneer in for agroecology at academic level in Bulgaria, followed by others like the University of Forestry in Sofia, the capital city, where there's a special agroecology course in the bachelor degree there. And of course, there is also the Agricultural Academy run by the Ministry of Agriculture, where there are demonstration sites and workshops on farming issues related to agroecology. There are vocational centers. We're going to see some of them today, like Bioselena, which also do vocational work, vocational training work. And there are other kind of non-formal, as it's called, training given to giving courses to farmers or practitioners. Next slide. One first example already mentioned at least twice, it's the Agricultural Center of the Agricultural University of Plovdiv. Already working on the topic since more than 3 decades, performing applied research and training on issues related to agroecology, organic farming to several stakeholders, of course, university students, but also farmers organizations, and other stakeholders. Maybe it's important to note that it's also a member of other international or even national networks like I4EU, which also delivers a more, let's say, a global perspective to the Agricultural Center. Next slide. Another initiative map was the so-called SOFERA, founded since 2018 with, let's say, more than 100 members, involved in the so-called biodynamic or as well as social farming, and providing mostly training on gardening and other educational aspects with more, let's call it therapeutic healing aspects for children with some disabilities. It's again also an initiative with has a partnership with other international networks and initiatives. Next slide. You will notice here that there is no active, as it's called, agricultural living labs related to agroecology in Bulgaria, though during the mapping process it was understood that the Agroecological Center of the University of Plovdiv has certain functions that are very close to the concept of an agroecology living lab. So this is currently being discussed by the university in order to develop such a lab and being active also on the topic of agroecology. Next slide. Another pillar that was mapped was the so-called agroecological movement in Bulgaria, seeing that it has much to do with other topics like organic farming, also biodiversity protection, and meaning that the NGOs or other stakeholders within the movement framework don't have to do only with farming per se, but also with other aspects related to the food sector, like the Bulgarian Society for the Protection of Birds or the Bulgarian Biodiversity Foundation, which, as we can understand, is related with farming in general, also with aspects of agroecology. Some examples are the Bioselena Foundation, the Eco Fund, or even the AgroLink Association. So I'm going to present you this one now. Next slide, please. Starting with Bioselena. It's an NGO active since, let's say, more than 25 years. It has initially, as you can see, started by the field organization located in Switzerland, but now it's a governance run by Bulgarian colleagues, and it does a more broad, I would say, important work on promoting organic farming and agricultural aspects for stakeholders like farmers, but also general public. So it promotes aspects like biodiversity, soil health, traditional farming methods, food waste reduction, and other. Next slide. Also, I should also say that it participates in several occasions in conferences, festivals, etc. A second example is the Hranko Cooperative, already active for more than 2 decades. It's actually a cooperative working at country level. It started as an informal civil society group that wanted actually to reduce to shorten the chain from local producers to the consumers. We have started several campaigns since the early days. We also developed some shops and tried to also establish frameworks for quality control. And as we can see, we have several members there funding the initiative, also sponsorships from other interested parts. Next slide. All right, so we're talking about agroecological practices, this pillar in Bulgaria. We see that they are mostly applied at the individual or family farm level. There are subsidies nowadays which are rather considered as the mapping process inadequate for new farmers that want to test agricultural practices. And there was also a perception that those set of practices are rather a niche, rather not a mainstream among farmers, producers, or even from the general public. The fault for this would be that we have a lack of structure and a coordinated movement promoting those agricultural initiatives in general and this set of practices per se. So next slide. So one example maybe here would be that we have the organization of a seed festival that is done for the last 10 years, the last decade, organized by a team of civil society group, the so-called Green Team, where we have several activities like the free exchange of seeds among producers of seeds and the public. We have workshops, seminars, lectures by other organizations, and of course, exchange of ideas and maybe sets of practice among the participants. As the organizing team declared, they were also influenced by neighbor countries' festivals, having like the one in Greece by the Peliki organization, who does similar work. So I guess it's also an important thing that brings together many different actors, stakeholders related to agroecology. Next slide. All right, so going at the academic level of agroecology, the science pillar of agroecology, we can see that as for many countries, the research programs related to agroecology are part of mostly of EU-funded projects related to farming and other environmental issues. So we have, besides the Agricultural University in Plovdiv, the Institute of Soil Scientists, Soil Science, Agrotechnology and Plant Protection, the so-called Miklos, and the University of Forestry in Sofia, and the University of the University in Stara Zagora. We see some results here, and yeah, it's okay. We can go to the next slide. Where, as a representative initiative, was included the Institute of Soil Science, Agrotechnology and Plant Protection, already active since many decades on many issues at related to agroecology, like soil and water, plant systems, so environmental quality. That works also a lot with farmers at farm level, which is farm level practice, very important, especially if we consider that it works on soil health, which is the main aspect also for agroecology. Next slide. So we come to the final slide about some conclusions and future perspectives. One main thing that was highlighted by the key informants that were interviewed, it was the necessity to really make them transparent and monitoring and have evaluation measures for all the agro-environmental subsidies which are related to agroecology. This would be I guess, a key element to change the perception of agroecology for general public. There are several challenges besides finding schemes and institutional support in terms also of the market available for agroecological products, and also the dependency of farmers on research funding in order to give some incentives to follow more agroecological approaches in farming. Also, there should be some change in local administration that to support the long-term initiatives working on agroecology. And of course, there should be at national level some concrete national policies to support this approach. So that's all in terms of presenting the situation of agroecology in Bulgaria as the mapping process has revealed. Having also Vladislav with us, as I said previously, we have the opportunity to have a discussion and answer questions and have a better maybe overview of the situation in Bulgaria. So thank you for my part.
Thank you very much, Vasileios. It's really interesting to see that once they used even for institute the name Agroecology, but then they gave it away, and now coming back maybe again to it, but we can discuss this later. Good. So as listed already on the agenda, so we will immediately continue with Romania and then coming to an overall discussion and questions for both countries.
Thank you, Alexander. I will try to share my screen. Let's see if this will work. We tried it out and it should.
At least Red Sky something. Okay,
Red Sky and now yeah, I was sure it will work. Okay, thank you very much, Alexander. I will try to respect the time limit or be under it so that we can also have time for discussion and reflections and to build on these studies, because actually I see from the participants that we have very nice people from Romania here that could at any time probably complete this study and upgrade it. So I'm very happy to have them here and humbling to present myself. My name is Attila Szocs. I'm an agroecological peasant farmer from Romania and the president of Ruralis, National Association of Peasant Farmers Practicing Agroecology in Romania. And this study was created indeed because we are very honored to be partners of the Agroecology4EU research project, and two of my colleagues worked very extensively in mapping out agroecology in Romania to bring together some of the narratives, some of the discussions, to highlight some conclusions, realizing that indeed this study is opening up the channel so that we can build on it in the future and so that we can complete it. So that's why it's very important that we started this work on mapping agroecology in Romania. So what I will present is I will try to present a little bit of the context of the development of agroecology in Romania, current situation on multiple levels, as it was highlighted also for Bulgaria. Of course, I will also give a non-exhausting cases of practicing agroecology, of the different layers of agroecology initiatives from Romania, based on mainly the 4 pillars: education and training, living labs, movement and practice. Science is to be developed also in the future, so very welcome also because of that we have this presentation and occasion to link and to complete the study later, and also some conclusions and some future perspectives. So this will be a little bit. So just wanted to put Romania on the map and welcome you all into this side of Europe. It's a great place to be, I have to say, and it's a great place to farm. So just like me, myself also, we are millions of small farmers in Romania. Actually, almost half of the Romanian population is living in the rural area. So that's more than 10 million people living or having its residency in Romania. And Romania has also a fairly large agricultural landscape. We have around 13 million hectares of agricultural land, which is making Romania one of the larger countries, agricultural countries and agrarian countries of Europe. So we have basically 1/3 of EU's farms we have a lot of small farms in Romania, and these comprise almost 3.4 million individual farms in Romania. So our farming landscape is very diverse, and this is a very huge bonus. And I will say why in the next slides. So just a little bit of how we use the land is most of the land is arable, most of the farmland, 8.3 million hectares, but we also have a lot of pastures and hay fields, also many of them in communal stewardship. So it's customary rights and communal stewardship. It's a very interesting form of working the land together. And also we have permanent crops and family gardens. So a little bit when we analyze the context of development agroecology, we cannot leave behind the agrarian history of Romania. And this agrarian history of Romania, which I will not recite from the beginnings because 20 minutes would not be enough. I just wanted to resume as the study resumes that basically the post-communist legacy, the post-communist transformations led that the agricultural system and then basically the whole food system in Romania it's in a very dual stage. On one hand, we have industrial scale farming, which has developed a lot in the latest years, where we have few farms but very big. And just as a glimpse, an average size of a large farm is around 2,500 hectares, but we have even farms as big as 56,000 hectares, which are in concession. So actually, it's a landscape that faces some challenges when it comes to how to implement agroecology. But also we have small-scale farming, which in Romania we call proudly peasant farming, because peasant is coming from a Romanian word which is quite beautiful, which is called țăran, which is people of the land, coming from the old Romanian language. And the average size of a small-scale farmer in Romania is around 3.6 hectares, but most of the farms are actually under 2 hectares. So you can see this duality also in the approach, also in the culture, also in the professionalism of farming in Romania, but also when it comes to holistic thinking about agricultural systems and agroecology itself. So what we have as also as a context, we have also a growing phenomenon that is more and more well documented of land concentration, of speculation over land, and of, unfortunately, land grabbing, so these illegal acts of appropriating land. These are documented by civil society, documented by EU, documented by researchers and scientists. It's the curse also of a country that has a huge agricultural landscape, maybe, and not the scope maybe of our discussion today. But still, small farmers are the backbone of local food systems. And just to give a glimpse of how this function is that still only on 12% of the agricultural land of Romania, these farms that are under 2 hectares produce 25% of the agricultural productivity. Many times even twice more productive as large industrial farm when we calculate the output of these farms. And also what the context of development of agroecology, it's a more prohibiting context, but maybe changing over time, is the influence of the European Union's common agricultural policy, which is still very much geared towards industrial practices, although changed a lot with the greening measures and so on, but still we consider that, and the informants consider that it's much more geared towards industrial practices, and it's highly subsidizing the income of large farmers. 40% of a farm income can come from the agricultural subsidy, while it's also very disproportionate direction, let's say, of the subsidies, because 97% of farms receive only 40% of the subsidy, while the remaining 3% receive 60% of the subsidy. So it's a huge differentiation of costs, which ultimately we will find out in the conclusions that actually financing agroecology is a huge bottleneck indeed in Romania. So just to get, I feel like I'm repeating a bit what Bulgaria was saying, because actually in Romania the same kind of the research led to the same kind of understanding that the use of the term of agroecology in Romania is much more linked to those of ecological farming, which is organic farming, agricultura ecologică, but it's also connected to peasant agroecology, this term that is highly popular, let's say, in the civil sector, civil society sector, especially small farmers movements, which has a strong basis in the practices and in the culture of peasant communities, which I was mentioning, there are quite some still. And as a discussion, the concept of agroecology already emerged, and we can find it documented in scientific discussions and academic discussions already from the 1970s, much more discussing about ecological farming. But as let's say as a keyword, it started to be used more from the year 2000. And this we can find in both academic and civil society discussions, more overtaking of the word of agroecology. Now, as to its understanding, based on the key informants and on the discussions that we had for creating this study, it is mainly understood as a more holistic and integratory concept than let's say organic farming, the certified organic farming, which it also comprises. So organic farming is seen as a part of agroecology, as a part, but near other many parts like biodynamic farming or permaculture or peasant agroecology or so. But it's generally conceived that it's a term that is rather referred to working with nature and not against nature. So it's part of this new current of doing farming. And it's much more a philosophy, and in cultural terms also we find it a lot discussing about the philosophy of working with nature in the peasant culture, but also it's practice oriented and related to the three pillars, practice, science, and social and political movement. The latter ones are being developed also by academia and civil society. So from a legal point of view, there is no specific legal framework on agroecology. It's basically a partial overtaking of the European approaches linked to the common agricultural policy, and mostly referring to the eco scheme measures and how they are implemented and conceived and negotiated in Romania. But there's almost no national adaptation of the holistic concept of agroecology. And then also from let's say a public policy and a public authority level, there's a lack of vision or appetite towards developing agroecology in the public institutions. And so of course, there's almost nothing, no institutional support or directly geared towards agroecology, as the country is still pursuing a very strong agro-industrial orientation. When we were looking and our informants were mentioning what are some of the potential stakeholders that could upscale, that could be centered on the development of agroecology, they were named as the peasant farmers of Romania, the small-scale farmers of Romania, which have a strong basis, but of course are also very much, the peasant farmers of Romania are also very much out on the discussion about industrialization and about of more industrial methods, but still they are being seen as a bedrock of action in developing agroecology. And also very important is the new entrants in farming, new farmers, young farmers that are establishing, it's a new current, like myself, young farmers who would like to take a more proactive, innovative approach on agriculture and not fall into the same traps as, let's say, big industrial farmers and all the dependencies of them. Now, it's also ruralization factors, is the fact that we in Romania, we are oscillating between urbanization and ruralization trends, and currently we are seeing as there's a new ruralization trend, especially with new entrants coming to the rural areas. So that's a very important layer also of society. And also other stakeholders mentioned were civil society and advocating networks. It can be professional organizations advocating for more organic farming, or farming associations, or civil society, NGOs, and even federations that are working to promote more environmentally friendly farming. Now, the most entry points that were observed into exposing agroecology were much more through trainings, more peer-to-peer trainings or farmer-to-farmer trainings, trainings that are more horizontal and where the trainer and the trainee learn from each other. Cooperative production. I will present some cases around innovative ways of uptaking agroecology through the involvement of either civil society or consumers. Developing of short food supply chains and model farms or on-farm model projects. So these kind of like agroecology farms that can be presented to the public so that you can learn on farm. So taking these ideas forward, just wanted to mention also a few aspects on the content, on the context, on education and training, following the little logos that we created in the project. So I tried to present them also based on these logos. Well, when it comes to academic training, closest to agroecology curriculum, we can find it in the bachelor and the master's programs of different prestigious universities, like the University of Agricultural Sciences from Bucharest or from Cluj. I myself finished the Cluj University and wanted to choose the closest degree to agroecology, which was indeed organic plant protection, and it was quite satisfying. So there's a nice opening towards bachelor and master programs that are geared more towards environmentally friendly practices and organic farming, and some that also treat sustainable agriculture, development issues, and science and technology. Especially nowadays, it's something that also tends to co-opt, let's say, also the principles or to discuss the principles of agroecology. Now, there's a more dramatic situation when it comes to high schools. Romania had a tradition of agricultural high schools and could have been a good bedrock also of more propagating agroecology. But unfortunately, these high schools decreased much over time, now counting around 57 units in Romania. But there's a lot of practice-oriented education that is delivered by civil society or delivered by professional groups or informal groups. And we observed here and we were informed about permacultural trainings, trainings on soil fertility, biodiversity conservation, and all forms of regenerative farming in a loose way described. But also, there is something that was very important that was highlighted is this generational transfer of agroecological knowledge and this practice that is taking place more in the intra-family farm succession, which is more succeeding small farms, like the next generation of farmers, of the peasant farmers, of small farmers, learning from the older generation. And this is a more cultural and creative way of transferring knowledge on agroecology. But this is a very informal knowledge, somehow not recognized as something important, at least, to be as a good channel of transfer agroecology by the national institutions, much more from academia, where we see now more projects between practitioners and researchers that are being developed also in Romania. Now, there are also some exchange networks where volunteers, where students can go and live on farms and practice agroecology. And this is also a network called WOOF, which is an international network, worldwide opportunities on organic farms, but also projects that were geared towards knowledge of transfer in agroecology, like Farm Train. Now, of course, just like in the case of Bulgaria, the living labs part is not so familiar, more understood by academia and initiatives coming out from researcher groups. But on a movement level, several associations and networks present and address the organic farming concept or high nature value farming and agroecology to the research knowledge at the moment is only being used in its holistic manner by one association, Ruralis, our organization, which was also part of the conceivement of the peasant agroecology concept. Now, also there's a strong link with extension services and agriculture with environment protection. There are foundations and associations in Romania that give out these extension services to farmers, and by this promoting agroecology, like ADEPT Foundation or WWF, or even some bird protection groups like Milvus. I almost finished with the context, and then I will be quicker on the practices, so to leave room.
5 minutes remaining normally.
Okay, yeah, sure.
Just that you know, yeah.
No worries. Okay, so just on the practice side, I was mentioning traditional peasant farming, so it's mentioned as a central pillar of agroecological practice in Romania, especially initiatives around saving traditional seeds, using traditional seeds, seed varieties, breeding, empiric breeding, animal breeding, so on and so forth. But it's more agricultural practices are linked with these cultural and social practices of preservation of traditional knowledge through food, through gastronomy, and through the use of the commons that I was mentioning. It's a very interesting way of also engaging into agroecological knowledge exchange and development. One very interesting and rising group is this, as I said, young urban and peri-urban citizens, which more and more start to practice agroecology. And of course, certified organic agriculture, which I wanted to leave last, but it's not the least important, of course, which has been developing since the 1990s. Also due to the subsidy systems under the CAP, but it's less conscious on agroecology, how we were presented, and more focused on niche market, on production level, and more to export orientation. But then also the development of short food chains and community-supported agriculture, for which I will give an example. From a scientific level, as I was saying, formal research is a bit incipient and limited, but it exists, of course, and of course we can research it much better to put more examples. And it's much more seen through the research is much more seen through the lens of ecology and the study of agroecosystems. So very shortly, because I know I have 2 minutes, but I really wanted to more present the context, because we have plenty of examples that we can develop and promote in the future, and everything will be in this study, which I will welcome you to read from the Agroecology for Europe website from January on. So we have a few studies that we mapped out. These were mapped out based on the different levels, the practice and science and knowledge trainings. So there are examples like Provision, which is a learning center for agroecology, which is doing experimental learning and training in agroecology. Is present in the northern Transylvania near Cluj-Napoca, but it's also relation with the wild fauna and the role of wild fauna in developing agroecological thinking. And this is done by Incredible Forest Resources. It's another civic initiative. But also Permaflora, which is much more the training from a young age when it comes to children and kindergartens, and how they are doing experimental training on agroecology. And then very important is the Agronomia Agro-Food Innovation, which is it's one of the living labs that we highlighted, that is coming from the Cluj area and developed by the University of Agricultural Sciences of Cluj-Napoca. It's a very complex initiative, which is bringing together enterprises, but also scientists and students and farmers likewise. Then we have social, very important, the role of social enterprises when it comes to promoting agroecology. There's a new wave of building social enterprises in Romania, and many of them promoting some of the pillars of agroecology. Or cultural initiatives that are preserving culture, and through culture also peasant culture and peasant agroecology, like the one in Hosman in Sibiu County in the central Romanian region. We also mapped out Ruralis as an association of peasant farmers, national association, at the movement when it comes to promoting agroecology. And now I just finish up with some initiatives that are much more on slow food, on short food chains, developing peasant boxes and consumer-producer relationships, or promoting the distribution of peasant seeds, heterogeneous plant varieties, and their on-farm preservation. So these were some of the initiatives that I wanted to say, finalizing with the CSA initiative of Romania, which is the Community Supported Agriculture Initiative, which very much in the core of their initiative is the concept of agroecology, and to propagate this to farmers and citizens likewise. So sorry for being a bit over time, but just to conclude, as I was mentioning, many aspects of agroecology are covered, but the term itself is not really known, just like in the case of Bulgaria, but it's a lot of potential. If it would be more institutionally supported, and also if they are more embedded into preschool curricula or high school and even academic curricula. And very important is the financial support that leads to institutional support also through the CAP. And here we had, it was presented, there's an opportunity with the national strategic plans of Romania, which now we know it didn't really work out that well, but hopefully in the future. And of course, this kind of need of shifting the industrial vision of Romania more towards agroecological vision. And this is the work that we are all trying to do. So I will leave you with this, and I'm very much looking forward to the questions and to the discussion. So thanks a lot.
Thank you also, Attila, for presenting about Romania. Now we can start with questions. I think like I saw some were already put in the chat, so maybe Baptiste, you can pick out some of them, or the people can ask them directly, depending how they like it. I did not follow the chat so much.
There is a first question from Natalia on two things, and maybe concerning more Bulgaria. On the fact that for Bulgaria, it was mentioned that there was a negative connotation of agroecology. And so she was asking if this is linked to a negative reputation of agroecology or to any other reasons. And she was also raising a question about the collaboration between farmers and local regional policy authorities in order to improve national policy, and raising if there is existing way for them to collaborate. And maybe the two other,
first answer this one, otherwise.
All right, should it be me or together with Vladislav? I guess Vaso has already answered the first part of the question. Yes, this negative connotation for the general public.
No,
yes.
It was actually in the beginning. It was actually in the beginning because after 1990, Bulgaria experienced much difficulties with crop production, the volume of crop production, so the so-called food security problem. So anything and everything which was related to increasing the volume and the quantity of crop production was welcomed in Bulgaria. So to increase the productivity per hectare, meaning that neither the researchers nor farmers nor practitioners, I have to tell you that actually the land, the process of privatization, returning the land to the previous owners, finished in 1999. So you can imagine that still the land belonged to the cooperatives, etc., etc. So in each cooperative, old style cooperative or private farmers, the aim was to increase the volume of production, don't care about agroecology, saving the land, birds, or whatever organisms. So therefore, the agroecology was seen as a bunch of practices that are actually not beneficial for food security. So therefore, the connotation of agroecology was not perceived as something really useful for society at that time. But as I said, after 1996, even after 1999, when the SAPART special pre-accession program in agriculture started in Bulgaria, probably in Romania as well, then the ministry, the government, and also NGOs, etc., started to work hard to include agroecological practices in the policies. So that's why are there any ways to collaboration for collaboration between farmers and local regional? I can assure you that they work very well together. And this is already for 15 years, more than 15 years, even more than 17 years or so. Even now, if you look at the latest version of Bulgarian strategic plan for development of agriculture 23-27, I'm very happy to see that, for instance, eco schemes, so-called eco schemes, 90% of eco schemes are beneficial for our agroecological aims, our agroecological targets. If you look at the practices that are supported under the agroecological schemes, including organic agriculture, they're beneficial for agroecology. So, you know, there is only one thing that I didn't like, that in the intervention, if we start this discussion, that, for instance, in the interventions, the so-called conservation farming or farming practices like zero tillage and minimum tillage, together with stubble retention and direct seeding, etc., have been removed. So this is the one thing that I don't like, because I was supporting this since 2019, when we did the SWOT analysis for the Ministry of Agriculture. But for all other things, including organic farming, the new strategic plans are beneficial. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Vladislav, for also these answers. Maybe now from others which were in the chat, so I don't know which one, but maybe ask the question directly. And Baptiste don't need to read it, but you can ask them directly. So unmute your microphone and put your camera if possible. Yeah, yeah, please. Yeah.
My name is Vera Stefanova from Bulgaria, and I wanted to ask the surveyors, did they make any distinction when they did the survey between the term agro-environment and the term agroecology? Because in Bulgaria, the translation is one and the same. And I think that all the negative attitudes and the negative perception of the farmers or from the general society, they were linked also to the term agro-environment and the practices from agro-environment. And what I want to say here is that actually there is very little understanding and knowing about the agroecology concept. And I'm not quite sure that all the things which are presented here and which were how to say, mapped and discussed are not to the biggest extent linked to the agro-environment. So this was my question, and I explain why. And just before I finish, to make another reflection, because it will answer the next question about the CAP strategic plans, and since Vladislav already started this, I wanted to say that regarding Bulgaria, the last summary, which was presented by the European services, shows that the ambition of Bulgaria in the CAP strategic plan is the lowest one, together with Poland. It's less than 35%. So I'm not quite sure that we will reach what we are aiming to reach with the measures which are in the strategic plan, but this is just my opinion. So please answer to the question, did you make any distinction between both terms and how? Thank you.
Thank you for the question.
Shall it be me, Alexander, or Baptiste, together with Baptiste?
Yeah, first way to answer. So to be honest, I do not fully remember all the part of the report, but I remember that this is discussed. But a part of the answer is to say that at the beginning of each interview with national, or what we call key informants, it was asked to them to share how do they define and see agroecology. And so it was mentioned by some of them, the distinction that you are here mentioning also as well. So we had elements about it, and during the conversation with the key informant, the distinction was made. But yeah, that's I think the clear way to answer.
Yeah, just to complement the Baptiste answer to Mrs. Stefanova, there were it should be made clear that it was actually about interviews where it was the interviewer was preparing the key informant that was going to ask about what is it all about agroecology. And so it was not just a plain question, what do you think about agroecology? So there was the space there to confuse the agroecology with agroenvironment. I mean, so there was small possibility this to happen.
Yeah, thanks. Who would be next with the question?
So there was a question from Constantin, but maybe if some others want to raise also a question. But Constantin, if you want to ask the question directly.
So in my case, it was not necessarily a question, it's an observation. We are we are an umbrella association belonging to the organic movement. Interbio, we are members of IFOAM, and also we are involved in a project which is a project, a sister project of yours. It's an organic target for Europe, but also in a project with Varia Stefanova, which is the Transect project, which is about indicators in agroecology. So I think it's a good start for mapping. But as I said in my chat, there is room for a better outlook of the diversification of the practices. So when I speak about diversification, I speak about business models and different initiatives organized in clusters in different parts of Romania. Some of them just for only one comment, as we see, and also we are doing a mapping, is that we see at least 4 types of farmers, irrespective of their sectors or their hectares. One, it's let's say potential. We are not, they are conventional and they do not want to change. Other ones, they are conventional, not convinced about organic, and they want to move to agroecology without organic. And also they are organic movement, which they want to move into this we call it organic plus. So from this perspective, if we look into this mapping in this criteria, we find different initiatives in many other regions of Romania, starting from southeast to northeast to northwest to center or to southwest. So I think congratulations, a good mapping, and we will perhaps during we already start the project for half a year, less than half a year, and I think this is a good continuation of your initiatives. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, one question from my side, if it's possible.
Yes, please.
Adriana Sanic, Faculty of Horticulture in Bucharest. I'm wondering about the criteria based on what the mapping was performed, because we already know that we need as much as possible all actors on the table, and not only initiatives or farmers or other ONGs could contribute or are important in this framework. And I think to not let somebody behind, it's important to find a way to discover all that can contribute, and also to link between them and have a network at the national level in order to be more active and to increase the participants in this agroecology movement. At the European level, it's very good, constructive in this way, but not at the national level, as I saw, also in Romania and Bulgaria. But if we can do something like a pattern that we can apply on this mapping activity, then I think maybe more actors will be revealed at the end of the game. No? Yeah. Thank you, Attila, for your presentation and for your work done by mapping.
No, thank you. If I may, thank you for both comments actually, because they are very important both on their own. Just to address the second one first, indeed, that's why we were foreseeing together in the project that we will update also the mapping based, especially the science pillar, based on more initiatives and more key informants, and to take it a bit further because it was a bit challenging for us that moment. So that could be, and as I said in the beginning, indeed, it's a work that it progressed, but it can progress much more. And we have space in this project now through the different activities to come together. We are planning many other activities like the hub and the network of networks where we can sit down and take this further in a very constructive way, as you said. And I completely agree, because that is something that the key informants, to reply a little bit on the methodology, identification of these key informants and how they started to supply the information that they have. Indeed, that has some opportunities, but also limitations. But indeed, in Romania, what the key informants were saying is that we are a bit segregated in our bubbles and networks and in different initiatives, some more movement-oriented, some more scientific-oriented, and some other there's need a space to come together in Romania. And that is a good opportunity that these projects, and now I'm relating also to the first comment, are doing, because what I feel is also that we can learn so much from the other project that was presented by Mr. Lianu. And indeed, that's why we were mentioning also professional associations, because there's one link that needs to be strengthened in order to come together to have more understanding about agroecology commonly, also through the professional association, which was another lack that the key informants were saying that we need to develop. So there you go. It's a start, and both of you are here. So I already noted down your names, and well, I knew your initiatives, and of course about the university in Bucharest, and yes, let's take this further. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you too.
Alex, can I take the word, by the way?
Okay, please.
Yeah, it seems that the situation is very similar in Bulgaria and Romania. And Viara and other colleagues of mine that have been, we've been working for more than 20 years in agroecology and organic farming. All these initiatives, all these projects, everything and anything related to promoting agroecology and agroecological practices among farmers seems that it may go through, for instance, National Agricultural Advisory Services, so AKIS system, which is also very important because, by the way, the only groups that were for the farmers that wanted to have subsidies, if I'm not wrong, but I'm not, the farmers that want to have subsidies through the measures related to agroecology and organic farming, they have to pass compulsory a course, training course on organic agriculture or agroecology within 24 months after starting to receive subsidies. So this is extremely important. It started after 2009. And many farmers benefited from this training to convert to agroecological practices or organic farming. Next thing, there was in 2019, when we started to do the SWOT analysis for the new strategic plan, one of my colleagues, Ms. Yanka Kazakova, she's from National University, Economic University in Sofia. They did a study among farmers. And there were measures at that time, which were called in the Rural Development Plan, if I'm not wrong, or the CAP, ecologically focused areas. And there were a few measures related to promoting agroecological practices. And I perfectly remember we started to discuss this, and I started to calculate. In the beginning, one of the measures that was mostly chosen by farmers was fallow land. only 2% of all farmers in Bulgaria have chosen leguminous crops in the crop rotation. After 4 or 5 years, 48% of Bulgarian farmers have been choosing leguminous crops instead of fallow land. But when they did interview among all these farmers, they said, okay, we see the effect of legumes crops in the rotation. It is very beneficial. We are starting to observe increasing of our yield, but we can't measure it. We can't monitor it. So the question that you actually raised in the very beginning is how we monitor the benefits of agroecology. If we clearly monitor with facts and figures and present this to the government, to the Ministry of Agriculture, then the policy can in turn can include this in future strategic plans or rural development plans. So one of the things that is missing is proper monitoring and communicating this to the society and to policymakers, I think. Thanks.
Okay. There are other questions somebody has?
I think we missed.
Yeah, Anda has one. Anda Losip.
Hello, everyone. Maybe related to Attila, I'm also from Romania and I'm a researcher, and I wanted to ask you, what kind of research do you think it's needed? Because you mentioned that there's not much research on agroecology in general, but especially in Romania. So if you would develop a study, what kind of study is the most needed at the moment to help contribute to, to help kind of convince the policymakers that this is the way to go, and this is, just to support the movement and bring it forward.
Yeah, thanks for the question. I think it relates to the. I want to create a parallel between this question and the question that was. I think we missed that question, and I wanted to also relate to that to the CAP strategy plans, because I will answer like this. First, you were asking what would make so that policymakers change their mind and turn more towards agroecology. I agree with Mr. Popov that research is very important, and of course it's. We need to give facts and incentives in science so that policymakers can do better decisions, but it's also a political question. I was presenting some of the angles of Romania because there's a strong agro-industrial lobby, there's a strong agro-industrial inclination in farming. This is something that doesn't just keep of science, it also keeps of the social dynamics. And because small farmers are more underrepresented, one of the things where agroecology can contribute is to study more and this is my humble opinion, of course it can be completed with our friends here. It's also on the more social movement side. How can agroecology be a catalyst to upscale representation and voice of practitioners of agroecology so that they can promote it to a policy level? We can together promote it on a policy level, and that's an important and something that to my well, it's good on one side, but bad on the other. Indeed, until now, we were doing this research. We were hosting quite some number of students from Wageningen, from French universities and so on. And it would be nice to also have all kinds of students, also from Romania, PhD students and masters and so on, that study this question. It's a more sociological question maybe, or it's maybe more linked to development of agriculture and so on. But this is just one side of the story. Of course, my answer is not complete. So definitely there are so many things that still need to be researched and proposed.
Yes, Stefano, you raised your hand, please.
Yes, thanks. First of all, many thanks and congratulations to the speakers for their nice presentation. And I jump in regarding research, as some of you may be aware that we are involved in a research project in Romania, where actually diversification is let's say at the heart of the project. But what is interesting that we are trying to implement an agroecology living lab working according to the organic farming principles. that is working in let's say in a consistent way consistent way to other agroecology living lab in Europe. So what we are we are going to do is to set up a small network of agroecology living lab working with similar rules. And one of these is in Romania. The project name is Agroecology Living Lab Organic. Mr. Adrian Azanica may remember about it, as they have funded the Romanian partners involved in this project. And if it's relevant for your mapping, we can send Attila more information, and maybe you can help us in disseminate the activities we are doing within this project as well. That's a comment more than a question. Thank you.
Good, thanks.
May I interfere a little bit just for asking the question of research? We are working on research with the farmers, and what we try to understand is how they can embrace agroecological practices based on their vision, which is not for let's say their vision has to do with the business approach. They will make investments if they find the market. So if they find the market, that means we have to direct our research into innovation practices and to identify how this can create a market from them, from production to the end user, to the consumer. So when we find this kind of research, I think this this is the essence of a living lab. It brings very much audience among the farmers, and they can embrace the subject. And I'll give you an example. It's this carbon capture market. So here it's a market which, if you make definite research on indicators, then you can find audience to the farmers to embrace the practices faster than they will do it otherwise.
Maybe I have one question to Attila. So you mentioned, or you put forward a lot that while peasant agroecology or peasant farming or small-scale farming in Romania, so would be this equivalent small-scale farming with peasant agroecology farming, and in which way they could be the people, or because they have a big mass of people behind, the ones which are implementing agroecology at much larger scale, if we make the addition of all the smaller farms, and bring this more forward also for the policymakers, that this is recognized as maybe one of the models for transition towards agroecology, but coming based on small scale and more peasant farming.
I'm sorry, Alexander, but I didn't get your question. Maybe if you put it in a more short term, or maybe.
Yeah, okay. So is peasant farming or small scale farming agroecology automatically, so equivalent?
Yes,
and
of course.
how far this could contribute, well, the small scale farming and peasant farming to translate it much more into the larger scale in Romania.
Thank you. Now I understand. Of course, I would dream to say yes, but it's not. Of course, it doesn't mean that peasant farmer equal agroecology. We would all be altruistic to think that. There's a good bedrock, and that was identified as because of the millions of small-scale farmers which consciously or unconsciously practice a form of agroecology. It's a very good bedrock to develop more consciousness around agroecology, more practice around agroecology, harvest and build more science around agroecology in a co-creational manner. And that is a good bedrock to have small-scale farmers and many other actors that we were saying, but indeed it's a very good bedrock. Now, the reality on the ground is the fact that in my village and in every village near me, there is a pesticide store, and many small-scale farmers don't know how to use pesticides, and they are using pesticides, and that is a reality. Just like big farmers, everybody wants to be big. It's a rhetoric that's why the agro-industrial model is seen as a mantra still. So of course it's changing, but still small wants to be big. There's a lot of out-migration of many of these small-scale peasant farmers can't find, as it was said, viability in markets. So then they migrate to other places to be wage laborers or seasonal workers. There are a lot of challenges. So if I would say, but there are also a lot of good examples, and all these good examples, especially around informal cooperation, or how to use the land together, I was mentioning the commons, or just the cultural and spiritual belonging to the concept of agroecology, which is something that it might sound very hippiotic, or how should I say, but indeed it was a driver of every big green change in our societies, no, from the US to coming to the East. In any case, it's a very strong bedrock, and what we see, this bedrock is very quickly disappearing. So of course the ones who persevere come together. So that is one of the network is Ruralis, our National Association of Agroecological Farmers. And when they come together, they start to exchange ideas, to show off their farms, to search for alternatives, better and more adapted seeds, more natural inputs, harvesting the local knowledge from different regions, because Romania is such a diverse country with such beautiful cultural heritage from different regions. So all this is coming together, and that is the opportunity in itself. And of course, from there, it was indeed the question also of research. How do we take this knowledge forward and transform it into policy, put it in the motor of policy making? And that is indeed giving them a voice, giving us a voice. And that is something that through agroecology, but also through our struggles, we need to build. And we need to not forget that this is also part of the movement of agroecology, to give a voice of the practitioners. So that's I would answer it like that too, but fascinating to see how our project evolves, no, and to see how diverse this gets.
Okay, thanks, Attila. Are there any more questions, either for Bulgaria or Romania? It's not the case. Then Baptiste, I think, or Kira puts two questions which you might fill out at the end of this webinar if you want. I think one about the take-home messages. So I didn't check what the questions are now.
It was about the main take-home or key results from the webinar, and the second one is just to ask you if you have any suggestion for future webinars or events that we will organize within the realm of the project.
Okay, so if you are still available for taking 1 or 2 minutes to fill this out, when we are happy.
So can you say what are the next steps for after this webinar for the project? Or sorry,
yeah. So the next step will be that we complete the mapping in much more countries. Then there will be this open access book where we synthesize or present already from 12 countries, and then maybe a few months later from the other remaining countries we did. And then, of course, one idea is also to synthesize the main elements from different countries so that we get sort of a transversal impression summary from different countries, and not just always looking at one specific country. So one example one new result I can already mention in having had a look while with Baptiste and Vasileios and others on all these country reports is that in many countries still the term agroecology is not well known or interpreted a little bit differently, as you were saying also for Bulgaria, the question of how it translated or linked to agro-environment things in Bulgaria, for example. But generally, this is the case in many countries that with the term already, it's not so well understood. And so also the interpretations are quite different behind sometimes. And often there might be much more things in agroecology, but it's just difficult to detect them because they are not named agroecology. That would be maybe one transversal key results from many countries compared to a few countries where the term agroecology and and things are all much more present since a few years. So that's sort of the follow-up, the perspective. And then also there will be a conference in Brussels normally in September with the sister project already about presenting some of the living labs from different countries, so which will now people can be invited, that they can travel to Brussels. And more importantly, will be there will be the Agroecology Europe Forum, which will be held probably in November, which is more, well, movement, science and practice, everything together, where there will be for sure workshops or side events or whatever about different initiatives, living labs and other cases of agroecology. The country or the location is not yet defined, but we will define it before, or Agroecology Europe will be define it before Christmas. But I think that's should be a big gathering and possibility to exchange much more about the development of agroecology in many countries in Europe.